welcome to the Speak Freely podcast. My name's Emma Dunwell, and today I'm joined by FairFuelUK founder and 2024 Reform mayoral candidate, Howard Cox.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So how are you today?
I'm fine, really. I mean, it's a bit cold, isn't it, the old weather?
It's chilly.
When you get to my age, you do feel it a bit more. But yeah, I'm fine. I'm a very happy man.
Brilliant. So we have spoken before, not on this podcast, but just for anyone who might not be familiar with the situations kind of gone through Reform to Integrity to Advance, you've hopped around quite a few parties in the last sort of year it's been. So would you just like to give everyone a rundown, first of all, of why you left Reform?
Yeah, it's interesting how you describe being hopping around. It's actually it's a logical, objective journey to where I've got to now, and I never expected to be where I am now because I've been running a campaign for 15 years for motorists to keep fuel duty frozen, and we've been very successful for it. So what was very important at that time was, I suppose, in the eyes of Reform, particularly Richard Tice.
Yeah.
Richard Tice asked me, because of my campaigning for motorists, and I was on various of his programmes on Talk TV, he asked me, would I like to stand as London Mayor? And it wasn't because of my incredibly good looks. It was all down to the fact that I got 1.7 million people signed up to FairFuelUK.
Yeah.
And I understood that. But FairFuelUK has always been apolitical. It has to be because, even Greens drive cars, those sorts of things. But he basically persuaded me because of the what was happening in London with ULEZ and ULEZ expansion. And I was quite happy to take on a certain Sadiq Khan in London because I've got nothing but complete disregard for that man. He's the most loathful, dishonest, pathological liar that's ever existed in politics. And so I took it on for Reform. And, the rest is history in that respect. I did stand for London Mayor, and I met some fantastic Reform grassroots members, fantastic people who I'm still quite close and friendly with. But unfortunately, Reform didn't really put their efforts behind me. Yeah. And that's the sad thing, Emma, from the whole thing. And even on the day of the election in Westminster, where the ballot box is, where I was placing my vote for me, you expect really Reform to have a few cameramen or camera people around to take a picture. No one turned up. The only person that did turn up was Rupert Lowe. And Rupert, bless his cotton socks, has remained a dear friend ever since. And we know what Reform did to Rupert Lowe. Yeah. So obviously I was a bit disenchanted with that. But Nigel asked me, sorry about the way that happened. And he said, we'd like you to stand as an MP down in Dover, front line of immigration. And I said, oh, OK, I'll do it. And I came second, got 24% of the vote and had another 4 weeks. I think I might have nicked it. I might have been sitting on those green benches. So. But I'm glad I didn't because of what happened that followed. And I was on various independent channels talking about effectively being with Reform. But one of the continuing questions, which was really peaked with a question asked by Dan Wootton in the autumn of 2024 saying, and I didn't know this was coming, he said, and what do you think of Tommy Robinson? And I said, and I continued to say it for quite some time in that year, I don't know really who he is or the person, etc., but I do know what he's tried to achieve. And I think he should be given credit to try and highlight these child rape gang issues right across the country. And I didn't know anything about that if it wasn't for Tommy Robinson. So my support for him was for his good work. And he did it, in my opinion, quite fairly and honestly. And that's one of his problems. He tends to tell the truth. He does shoot from the hip in that respect. But anyway... I got this phone call later early in of this year, 2025. If I continue to talk and support Tommy Robinson the way I've been talking about him, and this came from Richard Tice, by the way, but I understand it was backed by Nigel Farage. I know a lot about since. If I continue to support him, you'll be expelled from the party. Yeah. And what's that all about? This is a party of supposedly a freedom of speech, etc. Virtually 99 out of 100 policies I agree with. The transport policy I helped write, and things like that for their contract with the people, the pseudo manifesto they had, and I just didn't get it and what was going on. And my worry was, hang on, the writings was definitely on the wall here. This is not a party I want to be with. They believe in freedom of speech, which is absolutely democracy and freedom of speech are the centre points of my total being. So I spoke to Ben Habib because by then Ben Habib had been thrown out. and so had a lot of other people. I called Ben. I said, "What's going on?" He said, "Well, look, if you've been threatened for expulsion, Howard, I suggest you leave, you on your terms."
Yeah.
So I did.
Yeah, and this was around the same sort of time that Tice came on TV and called Tommy Robinson's fan base that lot.
Absolutely.
And so you were included in that. So, I mean, other than obviously the kind of, policy-wise, this kind of goes against what we think in terms of free speech, etc. How did it feel for you as a colleague? People that are supposed to, on a somewhat personal level, have your back. How did that feel?
I was hurt beyond belief, and I can tell you that I had a lump in my throat about the whole thing, and my wife was livid with what they've done, because considering I gave up probably most of that period of time standing for mayor and down in Dover, as a lot of other people did, to be fair, a lot of grassroots people. I was 7 days a week campaigning, 12 hours a day. You hear this thing knocking on doors and all that, but that's true. I did that.
It's hard work.
It's hard work, and it's a thankless task, because you come across people that spit on you, shout at you, and all sorts of things. I had death threats, you name it. I've had all those sorts of things thrown at me, and I've been accused of being a far-right fascist thug, and obviously the person that calls that out is our wonderful Prime Minister. He calls a far-right. But yeah, you're right. Richard was I wouldn't say a dear friend, but he was a good friend. Yeah. And then Nigel Farage I've known for 10 years, and I couldn't believe what was going on. And there was a lot of good people, and I got to know very closely people like David Ball and Gawain Towler, but he was thrown out, but then he came back in again, because he's incredibly loyal, and I respect him for that. In answer to your question, it hurt big time. Yeah. And I just didn't understand why. And especially as with my following, etc. And what I did get in my social media following is a massive uplift in my following, because they thought I was a principled, honest person for standing up for Tommy. Absolutely. And Tommy contacted me. Well, I think you know that people like Paul Thorpe, who's good friends with him, and people like Richard Inman, those guys, they arranged for me to go and visit him in prison. So I went to see Tommy in prison. What was that like? I spent 2 hours with him after going through about 13 doors, click, clink, clink. Reminded me of Porridge, all those clunk, Ronnie Barker sitcom thing. But seriously, it went in to see him in prison, and finally sat in a room with him, not much bigger than this. There were 2 warders in there with us, and I spent 2 hours with him, and I probably spoke for 5 minutes. Yeah. He spoke to me for about 1 hour, 55 minutes. I've never been so inspired by a person in my life. He told me, warts and all, the truth about himself, everything, his days in Luton, the so-called violence and all the things But I said, wow. My wife always had a respect for him more than I did, because I just didn't know him. But she'd seen a lot of stuff and a lot of his videos, which I hadn't seen. Yeah. And she said, "You want to listen to him, Howard?" So I did. I went to see him for 2 hours, and then I'm a complete convert, and I'm an unadulterated supporter of the man. And, I've been to various court cases with him. I've always stood there, backing him out. And I think I've met some of your colleagues out there who've filmed me and spoken to me. To cut a long story short, I've got no regrets whatsoever in continuing to support him. And I'm glad I'm out of reform. So was it the fact that Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe clearly they had your back? Rupert Lowe, am I right in thinking he was the one, did he message you privately after you left Reform, just checking in on you and checking that you were okay? Yeah, both Ben and Rupert couldn't be nicer. They actually respected totally the situation I was in after standing for London Mayor, which was a high profile position. Yeah. And not getting the support we should have done, and obviously seeing the corrupt way that Sadiq Khan was elected. And I'll just give you an example of that. Knocking on a door in Islington, bless its cotton socks, Jeremy Corbyn's constituency. Yeah. I was knocking on doors there, and this guy ran towards me. Lovely guy, Pakistani guy. He ran a corner shop there, and he said, "Oh, Lord, can I have a selfie with you?" And I said, "Yeah, of course you can. Have I got your vote?" He said, "No." I'm voting Mr. Khan. He's good for us. Right. But I wanted to beat you, and I wanted to shake your hand. And then he said, "Oh, right, okay. But I am going to vote for him." He showed me 10 voting cards. 10. All with his name on it, slightly spelt differently. Oh my goodness. So he put 10 votes in. That's the sort of thing we're up against.
I mean, what could technically stop someone from doing that? Is there any way to make sure that doesn't happen?
Well, I actually went to sort that out with him and say, look, so no, it's perfectly legal. It's slightly different addresses, there's all that, but it's him. And he was going to go in 10 times to vote.
Wow.
With each card.
I mean, that's
It's corrupt.
insane. Yeah, that is absolute
And the postal
corruption.
voting, the whole thing. And I'm afraid it did, and this is terrible because I'm going to be called a racist or something with this, but it definitely favoured the ethnic minorities rather than the indigenous Brits.
But this is because of the propaganda that's fed, saying essentially because we can't deny that all the ethnic minority groups are essentially told by the establishment, if you vote in this person, this is going to happen. They hate you. They're racist and everything. If you vote for this person, they're on your side. You know, it's all this tribalism. But just going back to my question, because I realised I actually didn't finish my question. I'm just so interested in I don't know, taking a peek behind the curtain, I suppose. But was it the fact that Ben and Rupert were so lovely all throughout that led you to then go to Integrity and then to Advance?
Yeah, yes. I met with Ben and he told me that he was going to try and set up a party and Rupert would be leading it.
Yeah.
And that all changed, as you know, because he set up Restore Britain, which is a movement, not a political party. Ben believes, and so do I believe, that you need a political party because you can't vote for a movement, but you can vote for a political party. And as this goes out, this particular recording with you, we're just waiting for our Electoral Commission registration to come through. Once that's through, it'll be fantastic, good news. Rupert decided to, because, and you've got to respect his situation. You said about hopping about, you said, with me. Well, he obviously won as a Reform candidate as MP for Great Yarmouth. And then he obviously had all the problems he had with Zia Youssef and Nigel regarding various things. He was accused of having dementia, and he was talking about mass deportation and things, and he was accused of abusing Zia somehow. All these things, that's all been dropped now because they know they were categorical lies. But Rupert is now an independent. If he went to Advance UK now, and bear in mind we're 2 to 3, maybe 4 years from an election, who knows when it's going to happen, I think it's be a time. My prediction, and Rupert might say, Howard, you're wrong, but I believe that he'll be joining up with Advance UK eventually, but it won't be immediately.
Yeah.
And so, and answering your question about how good, they were absolutely fantastic, and they remain absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
With me, I held a reception before the budget for MPs in Parliament, and it was swamped with Tories, the odd Lib Dem, and Rupert came along as well, and it's fantastic. It really went well. Not one Labour person appeared. There were 400 MPs, all invited, not by me, by their own constituents. Each MP got an average of about 30 emails saying, please could you attend this reception to talk about where you stand on fuel duty, changes in the budget. And that's how Labour treat working class people and small sole traders and all that sort of thing. But Rupert is the most effective MP in Parliament, even just on his own as an independent. You should see what he's doing. I mean, look at the derision he gets when he's...
People absolutely love him, and people appreciate, especially when it came to the inheritance tax argument on the farmers. He was right at the front, fighting against it, and I think that was one of the things that made people really be like, oh, he's not only on our side, he's one of us.
He is a farmer, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to affect him. So we know he cares. We know that when he's talking about these things, it's coming from a real place. It's not just words spat out with no feeling behind it, which is what you usually get from a politician.
He's incredible. He's a businessman. He's done it all before. He's got about 25, 30 businesses. And he reminded me at my reception about fuel duty, just how many of them are dependent on his transport. He's got lorries and vans and things and various things like that. And just putting up a penny, 2, 3, 4, 5p, etc., is a massive impact on their bottom line. Therefore, they pay less corporation tax, so there's less income to the Treasury. Yeah. Duh. Don't you see it, please, you chancellors? Yeah. Rupert is an ace guy, and I'm glad he's still my friend. But Ben Habib is now leading, as you know, the Advance UK party, and there is a man with even more honesty and integrity than I've met of anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And again, same with Rupert Lowe. Ben Habib has come out and everyone just absolutely loves him. I haven't met the only people that I know of that don't like Rupert Lowe and Ben Habib is usually because when it came to the Tommy debate, they were on the other side, or when it came to things like Zia Youssef, there's always been these things that have divided. And honestly, I didn't mean anything by it, but the reason I used the term hopping around is because I feel like not only for candidates themselves, for the average everyday person, people feel like they have no political home.
Correct.
It used to just kind of be left and right. And now everyone's talking about how much the right is getting split up. You know, I mean, do you think, because I mean, obviously I think the ideal situation for people would be for all of these fringe parties to kind of come together and be like, right, this is what we agree on, this is what we disagree on. What we agree on is about this, and what we disagree on is about this. So how about we just save the country? Do you think that that's something that can happen?
I think that is probably the $56 million question to ask about, because I am fed up with people saying, don't you think you're splitting the right and this sort of thing, the vote. In answer to your question, bringing these people together, the leaders of various parties, their egos are the size of Jupiter. And for example, I recently went on a protest, in Crowborough, where obviously we know there's 600 fit young undocumented people.
Apparently it's actually 1,200.
Is it?
And the residents are only going to be given 48-hour notice.
Yeah, I didn't know it's 1,200. I've heard 900 and it went to 600 and now it's up to, okay. Well, anyway, these young undocumented men can wander all the way through a town of just 22,000.
Yeah.
I was married there, I lived there for 8 years, so I know Crowborough quite well. But what I was just bringing on about the leader of a party, one of the people speaking was Nick Tanconi of UKIP, who I know quite well, and he came up, gave me a hug, and we had a selfie together and all that sort of thing. And I said simply, when are you coming over to Advance UK? And he said, when are you coming over to UKIP? I said, I'm never going to come over to UKIP. Absolutely no chance of that, my friend. You've got about 3,000 members. We've got 40,000 and we're rocketing like mad. There isn't much between us except certain, residual messages from the past about UKIP. And don't forget, UKIP was set up with people like, I think, Catherine Blakelock and Nigel, etc. And we can go back with Gerard Batten. There's loads of good people in the pathway. But Nick, unfortunately, and I said, he just didn't, I said, this splitting the right, I hate that term because I think that it's arrogant for us to believe that the electorate don't know who to vote for. And we should give them credit for, it's up to us to present the right policies and present them honestly and fairly for them to make a decision. I do believe voting should be compulsory because 19 million didn't vote at the last general election that I took part in. And the number of people I spoke to who said, Howard, I'd love, especially in Dover, where I stood as MP, you're definitely the right person to be our MP, but you've got no chance of winning, so we've got to vote for the Labour guy. That's the sort of thing we got. And Mike Tapp got in, and he'd been campaigning for 2.5 years. I was campaigning for 3.5 weeks. So so the splitting the right thing is the big thing that's thrown at me all the time. It's thrown at Ben, it's thrown at everyone. And there's loads of them, the Heritage Party, UKIP, I think there's about 11 right-wing supposedly parties. And again, I don't like labels of right and left wing either.
Yeah.
There's right policies or there's wrong policies. It's as simple as that. And all I know is that what I talk about when I speak to people, what Advance UK stands for is 4 pillars of, you probably heard it, equality under the law, freedom of speech, sovereignty, and I can't remember the other one. I should remember that. I've been saying it so often. But the point is, these 4 pillars, everyone agrees with. Every other party should be standing on the same thing, but they're not. And unfortunately, as we all know, the big one for me is, as I say, is honesty and integrity. And you mentioned the Integrity Party. That was just a stepping stone that a guy called Richard Shaw set up and gave it to Ben to talk about, and he threw it around, and then that became Advance UK. All the integrity people basically just swapped their membership to Advance UK. So really, that's just a little precursor to Advance UK. It's a sad time we're living in at the moment in time because you rightly pointed out people don't have a political home.
Yeah.
So many people don't.
Now, I think that Tenkoni does very well in activism and being on the streets. People know who he is. He's always there. And I think that people, when it comes to politicians specifically, people appreciate that because he's there standing shoulder to shoulder. I haven't seen many Labour MPs doing the same thing, you know. I mean, that when I have seen it, I've seen Zara Sultana stood on a stage speaking to a bunch of pro-Palestinians, talking about how the Tel Aviv Maccabi players should be investigated for war crimes the moment they step foot onto UK soil. So I do think that there could be a complementary aspect to combining the kind of real grassroots activism that Tenkoni does and the more kind of in-house decision making. But do you think, because a lot of people say that Tenkoni's activism is so strong that it may actually have the reverse effect and keep him in activism and stop him from progressing forward? Would you say that that's possible? Or?
UKIP have got no chance of winning a seat anywhere. But they'll always be there on the fringes, and they'll always be at a protest, etc. Protesting for the right reasons. Yeah. But unfortunately, they've got this image around them, this little fringe on them, a little, unfortunately, this fascist right-wing image of them. And there are, in every party, a fringe group of people that bring parties down. That happens in Labour, it happens in the Tories. And, you know, it's interesting. I didn't mention this just now, but the Tories wanted me to stand for London Mayor for them.
2024?
Yeah, 2024. There was, if you read an article by David Maddox in The Independent, he found he saw a secret email or something which went from a very senior Tory MP, please can we replace Susan Hall with Howard Cox because he's got more chance of winning. And, you know, I think it's a bit disingenuous on Susan because she's not a bad girl, but she's come out quite good recently in standing up to Sadiq Khan's, particularly on the child rape.
That clip was so infuriating.
Yeah, wasn't it just? But those are the sorts of things. Now, the Tories, you know, according to polls, are heading for something like an absolute, complete, even worse massacre, only getting about 17, 20 seats in the next election. And of course, we're seeing that Nigel Farage has already got the keys to number 10 from the polls. That's what we're told. But let me just say that Advance UK are just biding our time. We're the fastest growing party in Europe. We've got something like 40,000 paid up members, 50,000 sign-ups, all in about 17, 18 weeks. And it's even faster growing than what happened with Reform. When they stood in the general election last year, they only had 30,000. Yeah. Okay, they've got now 200,000, whatever it is. But they're not actually recording, this is another disingenuous, the ones that are leaving them, because most of the people at Advance UK have come from Reform. Yeah. And you know, we're just biding our time. And what other party is so democratic? Because Ben is just incredibly, he's set up a system, he's put a thing called a college, which I'm proud to be a member, and I was vetted. It took 2 or 3 hours to vet me, and even though my background is an open book because I've been vetted, and I should imagine the security services still keep a check on me and everything I go, but they know me inside. But Ben said, despite you being my friend, you've got to be vetted. I'm not having you on here unless vetted. So I'm a college member, and what the college is about is to hold the party leadership to account. Scrutiny. If the college is not happy, we're heading for 100 people on the college, and these are experts in their own field, intelligent people, critical thinkers, and they're all obviously aligned to the fact we believe in sovereignty, freedom of speech, equality under the law. These people, their job is actually to create policy, and policy is going to be coming over in the next 3 or 4 months. I'm on 2 or 3 of the committees now. One is energy, one is transport, one is net zero. Not surprising. And what we're doing is actually producing policy that we can actually, on day one, if we get elected, whenever the election is, go straight into legislation. There won't be Enid Blyton manifestos like we've had in the past, you know. So, and the other part of the college, you know, reason to be is to hold Ben Habib to account. If he doesn't deliver, he's out. Yeah. Now, you don't hear that from Reform, do you? You've got two people at the moment. You've got Zia Youssef and you've got Nigel Farage and the great dictators. It is a dictatorship. And I was in there and I got to know a lot of the people there, and whatever they say goes. If you react against them, you're out. Well,
essentially, I mean, just to break it down really simply, these are parties that are hoping to be elected to run a democracy. So your party inwardly and outwardly also must be democratic. It can't be a kind of, oh, don't say that and don't say that. It has to be completely free. And if the person or people heading it, like we have with Reform, with Farage and Youssef, if they are not living up to their promises, if they're not doing their job, or worse, if they are actively going against their own policies and manifesto. I mean, let's say, you know, we saw some really massive reversals like we've seen with Labour, the one in, one out scheme, so many things that we've seen. If that was reform, then who is holding them to account? So I think that is going to just only bolster Habib's popularity even more, because it's showing people that in the party as well, he's also democratic.
Oh, he's a phenomenal. He's so principled.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to do it. He's a very well-off, successful businessman. He doesn't do it. He could be a gin and tonic in the Maldives somewhere, having a good time.
Yeah.
But he cares passionately about this country. And you know, he was born in Pakistan. You know, English mum and a Pakistani dad. But you cut his veins, and you'll see just the Union Jack flowing out of every single leak if you cut him.
Yep.
The thing about Ben, and it took, because I'm not easily persuaded by people, and it did take me something like 3 months to say yes to Richard Tice to stand for London Mayor. And the main reason I stood was because I wanted to take on Sadiq Khan.
Yeah.
It wasn't because I wanted to stand for reform specifically. And let's face it, every one of your viewers listening to this must understand the Reform are only doing so well in the polls because the Labour Party and the Tory Party are so bad.
Yeah.
And the Labour, for 14 years of the Tory government, some good, some bad, and obviously the problems with the COVID situation, the lockdowns, which we're now learning that wasn't necessary, of course, and we all thought that at the time. But their monumental failure with immigration, 3 manifestos they had calling for, we will reduce immigration, instead it went up and up and up. And guess what? We've got a Labour government that's poured petrol on that failure. And that's the situation we're with, and that's why Reform are doing well. Reform can do anything. I think Nigel could probably murder someone, they still say. I know. I do believe he can do anything at the moment in time. And the more they laugh at him in when he's sitting in Parliament, and they don't let him speak and like that, the more people feel for him.
Yeah.
And he's a brilliant communicator. There's no one can touch Nigel Farage in communication. His ability to talk off the cuff is monumental. I've got nothing but respect for him. I also happen to like the guy. I've known him for a long time, and I've had many a beer with him and a lunch over the years. Obviously now we've fallen out, and the main reason we've fallen out is because I support Tommy Robinson.
Just to interrupt for 2 seconds, everyone, I would like to remind you all that clean skincare should never mean compromise. For years, we've all trusted big skincare brands, most of which are tied to Big Pharma and have ingredients on the back of the pack that are so long that you can't even pronounce them, let alone know what they're really doing to you. Which is why I'm so proud to tell you guys about our sponsor, Forticare. Now, Forticare is a completely British-made tallow skincare line dedicated to keeping things natural. If you go on their website, you'll find multiple scents of face and body moisturisers, as well as a completely chemical-free sun cream. And if you use the code SPEAKFreely, you'll get 20% off your first order. There's a lot of talks going on recently with screenshots of certain websites. I can't remember what they're called. They've all got these funny names. Yeah. It's like Coming Up Reeves, or all these hinting at who's going to be the next PM, and they're all coming from within the Labour Party. And there's been talk of some sort of coup to out Keir Starmer. If that was to happen, who do you think would be stepping in his position? A lot of people are saying Shabana Mahmood, Rachel Reeves. Some people are saying Angela Rayner. Who, if that was to happen, who would you have your bets on?
My bet is on Angela Rayner, because when she resigned from the Deputy Prime Minister position, or whatever she was called at that time, in the House of Commons, I've never seen so many Labour people turn up to listen to her resignation speech. She is popular within Labour more than any of the others. Wes Streeting and people like that are not as popular. No way. And Mahmood, I'm sorry to say, even though she's talking a tough game, when you get down to page 13 of what she said on her speech the other day when I had my reception, that's one other reason why Labour couldn't come to my reception, so they said, was because they were listening to her speech. But if you get way into her speech and right into the detail, you're going to see, immigrants are going to be allowed to come over here and stay here for up to 30 years.
Well, yeah.
What's that all about?
In the first paragraph, I saw, it was all about talking big game, like you said, about we're going to shut down every single asylum hotel. And then a little bit lower down, it's what we're going to do instead is we're going to open safe and legal routes for asylum seekers. People don't want that. People just want it to stop. Maybe not permanently, but I think it can be agreed amongst the majority of people who are seeing the problems we're having economically and safety-wise in this country, that even genuine asylum seekers, we can't afford to support them. We haven't got the resources. We haven't even got the resources to get our own people off the street. I've used this analogy so many times, but again, I just think it's so true. What we're doing at the moment would be like me inviting you into my house to come and live with me when I have no electric, no food, holes in the walls, and then I invite you to bring the rest of your family and then allow you all to rearrange my furniture to your liking. That's what we're doing at the moment. So
can I just say that's a very clever analogy. I like
Thank
the way,
you.
that's very good. You should copyright that somehow, because I think that's a beautiful way of putting it.
I will copyright that. Can't use it, it's mine. But yeah, I do think that there is just this sense of absolute incompetency of what is going on at the moment. And then there's the other more sinister side of it's an agenda. They're doing this on purpose. Where do you fall?
I do think it's deliberate. Yeah. I didn't initially. I thought, I had sympathy for certain things that were happening with certain of the nationalities of the immigrants coming over, where they were coming from. And I understood, yes, they were under persecution because they were gay or something like that. All those sorts of things. Yeah, I think we should have some sympathy for that. But then I live near the south coast, and I quite often see these boats coming in when I'm walking my dog, and my dog growls at them all the time when they come. I've trained her to do that. No, seriously. But I've never seen a baby brought in. I've never seen an older woman, or even the odd young girl I've seen come in, must be a teenager or something like that. But in the main, they're young, fit men, or between the ages of 18 and 35, 40. That's got to be a deliberate policy to bring them in. And it comes back to, if we go back to the days of Tony Blair, because when he opened the doors to everyone coming in here, this is to build a socialist left-wing country. And that's what it's about, because these people will obviously vote for a benefit-driven state. Yeah. And that's what's wrong with it at the moment. The incentive to come here is phenomenal. Even Macron says it, and he's getting a lovely, approaching 900 million quid from us, to do something about it. But when you see the police, and there's a lot of good people, especially on the independent media, people like Danny has been over there on the coast, and watching the police just waving him goodbye and saying, hello, have a good trip. Yeah. You cannot believe this. And this is, yes, we're out of the EU, but and obviously these are human beings, but we do need a moratorium for about 10 years of immigration. We need to stop it. Yeah. Because, we've grown by whatever it is, we've grown well over, I think, over 70 million is a population. I was born in 1954, and I think the population was something like 50 million. Yeah. That sort of thing.
Such a drastic change.
Well, it is, on our service and everything. And I don't want to be accused of being a racist or a fascist or whatever, but I am accused just for saying what I'm saying. And when I see my daughter scared stiff to walk down the streets of London, and I've been mugged twice near Charing Cross, not physically hit or anything. Someone tried to grab my phone, but I held on to it. Unfortunately, one of the time the police saw it, but they chased him and then gave up. But that's typical. But I'm a 6'4" guy, quite a big guy, and I was just I do hold my phone quite tightly when someone rang me. I just went to do that, and this guy ran by on one of those motorised scooter things, and got that and tried to grab it, and he had my hand, and I went like this, and that's scary, but that's happening day, and we're seeing lots of quite famous people being mugged and this sort of thing. It is very, very scary. My friend Alex Phillips is a good friend of mine, but she's in love with reform, I'm afraid. But she's been mugged 2 or 3 times, that sort of thing, and it's so scary. I won't allow my wife or my daughter go into London now. And I'm a proud Londoner. I was born in London, worked in London, educated in London, Southeast London boy, and that sort of thing. And give me a couple of Chardonnays, and you'll hear me going, all right, and that sort of thing. But I won't allow them to go into London on their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I come home late at night from various meetings I go to, the last train is about 11:34 to go take me back into Kent. I have to say to you, I'm nervous. and I'm 6'4", big guy, and it's scary.
I mean, luckily my partner used to do security, so he's always got eyes everywhere. But there's been a few times where we've been getting off the tube, and there's been a guy who's like followed us a little bit or has been looking at me funny, and he hasn't quite realised that I'm with a man. And literally, as I've turned round to be like, is that guy following? My partner's already looking like, yeah, I've seen it as well. It's okay, don't worry. But if I was on my own, there have been countless times where I've probably been in danger and might not have even noticed.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I mean, even
but it's in
I've
daylight
seen people, but yeah, of course it is. Well, because with with things like the tube, I mean, even within certain times, I thought it was like past the time, but I've heard it in the middle of the day now. You know, when you're going on certain tubes and it comes on the intercom, pickpocketers operate in this area. Please make sure you're holding on to your belongings. And I'm thinking, it is like 10 o'clock in the morning, and you're like, what? And I'm looking around and I'm thinking, where's all the staff?
And where's the transport police?
Exactly. And actually, I saw a video the other day of this guy who had been attacked because, oh no, that was it. He saw this guy attacking his girlfriend. So he went up and basically said, "Are you all right, love?" and everything. And then the guy turned on him. And the TfL worker told him to leave, as if he was the one causing the problem. And this is but they're not trained. They're just average. So the tubes aren't safe. Nowhere is safe at the moment.
Well, I call this the Lucy Connolly syndrome. She's done a minimal thing like that, but she's the one in prison.
Exactly.
This is what's happening to our country. We are on the precipice of, I think, a rebellion. I don't think, depending on what's happening on the next, I would say a year, I think we've got a maximum of a year in terms of which direction Labour is taking us. And, you know, we're all suffering from a cost of living crisis. There's no climate crisis.
No.
None of that either, all those sorts of things. The crisis is actually in our political leadership, the dishonesty, big time. If we don't actually rise up, and that's where, you know, Tommy's accused of inciting things, but he's not doing that at all. You analyse everything that Tommy says. I've listened to him every word since I've got to know that man, and he doesn't say anything bad. He said a few bad things about a few people, yes. He may call him a scumbag or an arsehole, people like Mike Graham, for example, recently when he's lost his, because he wouldn't admit to the post he put out on Facebook, and Mike's a friend of mine as well. But what we're seeing is that I think the people in this country, I really do believe, are on the verge of rising up. I don't mean there's going to be a mass violence in the streets and that sort of thing, but I think there'd be things like not paying council tax, not paying the BBC licence fee, which I totally support, but various things like that, and not paying your parking fees, not paying your ULEZs. I think there'd be a mass rebellion against the culture of actually controlling us. Well,
yeah, I think that we are starting to see this, maybe not in so many physical ways, but, and you know, it might sound a bit hippy dippy, but I think that as well as being in a war of information, as I call it, we're in a spiritual war. I would say, you know, it feels. And it is about feelings. We're having our home taken from right out from under us. Our children are being attacked. When they're not being attacked, they're being indoctrinated.
Yes.
Our men are being demasculated and told that if they actually do the things that a man is supposed to do, then they're toxic and everything like that. So you have no, like, you know, it's hard to find good men that actually want to protect and provide. Then at the same time, we're telling all the women, you know, don't raise kids, just go out and get a job and everything like that. We are absolutely in a spiritual war at the moment, and one of the things that I've seen that people are using to combat this is a mass return to Christianity.
Yes.
And I think that, kind of seconding what you're saying, I think that some kind of rebellion, in whatever form it may be, will be soon to follow. What do you think about the return to Christianity that we've seen?
It's interesting because I'm pretty agnostic.
Yeah.
But I believe in Christian values, and that's the important thing.
See, this is the current theme.
I'm probably one of the few people that doesn't believe in God, that's read the Bible from the Old Testament all the way through the end of the New Testament. I really have. When I was about 12, I was in a choir, and I could sing then, and as a 12-year-old boy, I was once paid 10-shilling note to sing Ave Maria at a wedding in Southwark Cathedral, and I stood in front of about 200 or 300 people going Ave Maria, and as you can see, I can't sing, but the thing is, I learned from the vicar then, who was a bloody decent bloke. He was a great guy, very honest, and he ran a youth club. He was making children feel important, all that sort of thing. A decent, honest guy. I believed in his values.
Yeah.
Even though, and he said to me, Howard, it'd be lovely if you joined the church and become a vicar. And I nearly said yes. But I didn't in the end, partly because at that point at 12, hormones were flying around. There was girls, and I was playing drums in a jazz band, and all sorts of things that were changing my life. But a lot of things happened in my life. My wife getting cancer, my mentally handicapped brother dying. All sorts of things happen. No, it's all right. But it happens. I'm not unique in this. Those are people who've got this situation. But I just don't think there is anyone looking after us in such a spiritual way. But I am spiritual.
Yeah.
And my spirit is being good. I believe in goodness. That's what I'm the sort of thing. And your point is very valid. People aren't coming to Christianity more. I've got some great friends, at church every Sunday. I sometimes pop in and see them and etc. But one of the things I hate about the Christian going to a church ceremony is the vicar standing up calling us all sinners.
Yeah.
Telling us, oh, you're all sinners and all that stuff. I said, no, we're not. Just talk about the goodness. Talk about the good things in life and what is best. And I went to the launch of my dear friend Penny Mordaunt. Do you remember Penny Mordaunt, who's the MP and holding the sword at the coronation? And she's to a book launch. She's just produced a book with Chris Lewis called Pomp and Circumstance. And I recommend anyone get it because...
Oh, I've heard of that.
Well, it looks at British values and history. And there is hope for this country if you actually return to those values, which is, and it is on the side of Christianity all the way through to just being a decent person, human being, and helping people.
Well, English law originally was based off Christian law. I mean,
Magna Carta.
Yeah, we've never been, and this is something that even as a Christian, I would never advocate for direct Christian law because I think that to me it defeats the whole object of free will.
Yes.
Right. So I would never advocate that. But it's really interesting how, like yourself, people who are agnostic or maybe even atheist still want to live under Christian values. It's what we know, it's what we've been taught, and it's just basic goodness, it's basic humanity. Love thy neighbour, thou shalt not murder, don't steal.
Well, the Ten Commandments are pretty good.
Exactly, it's just something that everyone should follow, really.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. And from my point of view, my agnosticism, if that's the right way of saying it, isn't an anti-Christianity, far from it.
Yeah.
But I am anti-Islam. I am totally anti that approach because all I see on the regular media things that go around, both independent, is that they want to come and take over our country. And, someone like, you will have no right to be on this planet except as a subservient individual because you're a woman.
Yeah.
And then we're seeing, the right to marry a 6-year-old and have sex with that child. This is where I am totally behind Tommy Robinson in what he's trying to achieve. And that man, to me, there's no way he'll ever be in the House of Lords or knighted. But I bet you, he is a member of Advance UK.
Yeah.
And he says he doesn't want any political situation. But I bet you if he stood as an MP for Advance UK in a certain area, he'd be swamped with votes.
Oh, absolutely.
And I've spoken to him many, many times, and a lot of his colleagues around him. There's some great people. And that's the same with Ben Habib. But Ben Habib is building up a group of people, and I'm proud to be one of them. Very, very good people who are worth listening to. They're objective. As I said earlier, they're critical thinkers, and they really believe in this country. And I don't believe really, and certainly Labour do not believe in this country. Yeah. They do not believe it. They believe in this globalist approach. We know about WEF, we know about, WHO, the UN. All these things have an agenda, which is basically to reduce our freedom, not just freedom of movement, but freedom to live.
Yeah, well, and it's to erase just our country's sovereignty in general. And I see it, a lot of it I see as desecration. I mean, a lot of these globalist agendas, things like, we have COVID lockdowns, or as I call it, convid, the climate agenda, trans ideology, all of these things come eventually, if you follow it, it all goes back up to these big globalist organisations. Even with the clashing of cultures that we're seeing at the moment, people have been multicultural. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Everyone has lived together quite happily. Obviously there's been times, but everyone, for the most part, has got on just fine. And then in the last couple of decades, maybe in my lifetime, all of a sudden it's gone very, very wrong. And you raised the point about Islam. Now, people say banging on about Islam again. Well, I'm sorry. It seems to be pretty much, to my knowledge, the only religion and the only culture that is being imported on A, such a mass scale, and B, we are expected to change our country to fit them. And I've never understood the concept of someone that is fleeing persecution, fleeing a war-torn country, that then wants to come here and make this country
the same
like that one. I don't understand it. Do you think that when people talk about things like sleeper cells in these asylum seeker hotels, and then obviously now they are actually moving over to army barracks, so where do you think it's going? Do you?
Without a doubt, this is a deliberate policy to infiltrate. It goes back for years and years and years. The whole of Western civilization. I've met several decent Muslims. I know quite a few that are decent and they're working hard and everything, but all of them, without a shadow of a doubt, saying eventually the world will be completely controlled by the Muslim faith, the Islam approach to life. And I talk to them, I say, when you get down to the crunch, you talk to these people that are running a corner shop or everything like that, and they've been here for some time, and in fact they're British citizens. When you ask them about them, the aspect of freedom for women, the whole thing about children, all the other things, marriage young, having, being bigamous, having 5 or 6 wives and all that sort of thing, I'm afraid they do believe it too, even though they're decent human beings. The Quran is, I've read The Idiot's Guide to the Quran. I haven't read the Quran itself, and The Idiot's Guide, no, it's an independent thing. It wasn't, it was just to say, there's some very good things in it. But when you get to the crunch, it's all about actually controlling people.
Yeah.
And invariably it's controlling the weakest, which is the women in terms of physical strength. That's all I'm talking about, because all the women I know are much stronger minded than I am. But I am worried sick about what's happening, and I'm 71 years of age, and I am glad I'm at this end of my life, because I'd hate to be born now, or a teenager growing up in your young age like this. I worry for your future, and I thank you for having a channel to actually speak openly like this, because the BBC wouldn't talk to me like this, and even GB News, which I used to be on regularly, and Talk TV, they basically ghosted or blacklisted Ben right on the day he launched Advance UK, which is June the 30th. Previous to that, he was on 3 times a week.
And then all of a sudden
he's never been on it. Excuse me? Well, it's the Nigel Farage channel, is GB News, as you know, and he earned about £400,000 in the last year from, on his show when he occasionally turns up to do it. And I know I'm going around the place, but at the moment in time, for decent, honest people, there are not many airways or ways to communicate their worries. And thank heavens for people like Dan Wootton, Maya Toosey, and all these sorts of people like that, Richard Inman. I can count 8 or 9 decent independent things. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't be heard. I for one, for example, in my FairFuelUK campaigning, up until I was candidate for London Mayor, I wrote loads of op-eds for papers. I even got paid, which is quite nice, and that sort of thing. And I was respected. I was always the first to go to anything about motoring politics or road user politics, that sort of thing. Ever since I declared for reform, suddenly, no way. Ever since I've declared for Advance UK or to support Tommy Robinson, I'm less involved with it. I think I mentioned to you before this interview, I spoke to the features editor of The Sun.
Yes.
And that person is a great friend of mine, and he's basically asking a question: what did I think would be happening in terms of the financial situation related to the budget? Anyway, we talked about that aside. My point is, I'm worried that we can't get our message out, because the mass majority of this country do support the principles and policies of Advance UK. I promise you they do. And I haven't met anyone, when I sit down and talk to them, would disagree. But you won't hear that on BBC, ITV or Sly News and all the other things. And that's the issue that worries me, is we can't get that across to our youngsters, because they're being educated, and you used the word indoctrinated earlier, with a cult regime that is totally and utterly opposite to the Christian values of this country.
Yeah, 100%. Well, that's why I term it as a desecration.
Yes.
Because, even right down to the woke ideology. We have children, recently what everyone's talking about, puberty blockers for 10-year-olds. My brother is 10 years old. He's severely autistic.
Oh,
Absolutely no way would he be able to make that decision.
No.
He wouldn't even be, even when he's probably like 15, 16, he still won't be able to make that decision. They are children. You know, even I'm 21. I wouldn't class myself as, if we're talking about things like surgeries and all of these hormones and everything, I wouldn't even class myself the age in which you'd be able to make that decision. I think that you only reach proper mental maturity when you're in your 30s and your 40s, and it's only then when you have really decided what person you are. And if then you kind of think like, okay, well, I've actually been feeling like, you know, fair, you do you. But anything younger than that, you have been indoctrinated some along the way. And a lot of the time you'll see that with these trans or non-binaries, which I just don't understand, how can you be neither? But they still class themselves as part of the trans movement, even though they're not transitioning from or to anything. But and you'll find that most of them are either neurodivergent or have suffered abuse in the childhood. So I do think that it's a massive desecration, almost a war on our children right now.
Well, I'm on a WhatsApp group with people like Sharon Davis.
Oh, yeah.
And I've got nothing but, I'm in awe of what she says about how she stood up to this whole thing with about LGBT stuff in sport, you know, and the thought of a guy that looks like me, just because he's got a dress on, can go into female-only spaces. It beggars belief, but there we have a front bench of people who've never run a business. They've never, you know, everything is built around idealism. Yeah. You know, the green agenda is the sexual agenda, which is what you're talking about. I see it non-stop, but I'm so pleased there are people like you, your age group, that I come across again and again, and they're all shouting, you know, at the Crowborough protest that I walked down the high street with. There are people wanting selfies with me. This old get me, you know, been around a bit, but they recognise me from some of the telly and I'm doing. But a lot of them were very young people. We're right behind what you're doing, Howard, and I'm so chuffed. That's why I've got hope, and that's why I'm pushing Advance UK big time. Yeah.
So tell us about what has been on the cards lately for FairFuel UK and what you've been up to and what you've got upcoming as well.
Yeah, well, this is the 15th year, and I've managed to keep fuel duty frozen, and I think it's important to understand that even with it being frozen, we're still the highest tax drivers in the world.
Yeah.
You know, especially for diesel. And as you probably realise, diesel is the commercial heartbeat of any economy. Every truck is driven by a diesel engine. And even if you want a vegan burger, that has to be, you know, for a green person who wants these vegetarian, wonderful, even vegan lifestyle, it has to be delivered on a truck.
Yeah.
So it affects every part of our life, the cost of fuel. And the fact that, you know, you asked me where FairFuel UK is going, I'm going to continue to fight. I don't know why I'm doing it sometimes. My wife sometimes says it's about time you stopped. But I'm afraid no one else is actually doing this sort of thing, because the motorists, there's 37 million of us who drive, of which something like 35.5 million drive a diesel or a petrol vehicle. And the only reason why electric vehicles are being adopted is because they're subsidised, and also they're banning the competition, i.e. diesel and petrol vehicles in 2030. And that's one of the policies that we would, you know, Advance UK would stop, would reverse net zero. Net zero would just be thrown out. And for your viewers, they should understand that for every household, heading towards net zero is going to cost £40,000 per household.
I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, I've proved I spent a lot of money on an independent economic analysis by the Centre for Economic Business Research, a highly respected economic group. And they came up with the fact is, what is the 2030 ban on new diesel and petrol car sales going to mean to the economy?
Yeah.
Well, the actual benefits, the costs are 5 times the benefits.
I mean, it doesn't shock me. I mean, only recently with the recent COP summit, they have knocked down acres of forest to build a super highway so that they can get from the airport where they travel to on their fuel guzzling private jets on the super highway to the conference, when we have things like Zoom and Skype and everything. I mean, I don't even know why they have to travel at all.
And Keir Starmer took 460 staff.
Yes, exactly, 460 of them. It's just completely ridiculous. Why is that necessary? It's not. And then,
well, anyone with a common sense and objectivity, understanding the science, and I know the science out there, people. I do understand. CO2 is good for this planet.
CO2 is the gas of life.
It's the gas of life. It's part of the photosynthetic process, and if we doubled it from 0.04% to 0.08%, Africa would green up.
Wow.
That's the sort of thing we need to hear. And what we're going through is not a climate crisis. We're going through climate change, because that's what's happening, because it's a cyclical event.
Yeah.
And it's mainly being caused by the cycles of the sun. So there you go. I mean, what you asked me what I'm doing. I'm fighting FairFuelUK. I'm fighting on behalf of the motorist, and I'll continue to do that.
Brilliant. So before we wrap up, there is one more thing that I'd like to ask you in regards to driving. Obviously, the attack on fuel has been insane, but now there is actually rumour of a pay-per-mile scheme when it comes to electric driving. Do you think that they are just trying to eradicate independent driving altogether as another control grab?
Well, pay-per-mile is the most unfair way of we already have pay-per-mile because we've got fuel duty.
Yeah.
Because when you fill up your car, the more petrol you put in, the more further you can go. So and 60% of what goes into your tank goes to the government in tax. The interesting thing about this pay-per-mile thing, and they're just doing it on electric vehicles and certain EVs won't qualify and some will qualify, it's the thin end of a wedge. It is a policy of actually controlling us in terms of where we go, where we go, what we do in the car, and keep us within what's known as 15-minute cities.
Yes.
All of these sorts of things are all linked together. And of course, the big thing linked to it is digital ID. Because how do you actually measure pay-per-mile? If you're going to go to every MOT, and bear in mind the first 3 years of a car doesn't have to have an MOT, you go to an MOT and record the mileage, and then you might get a bill, an annual bill, and you pay by direct debit every month of what you've done in terms of your driving. It will benefit, pay-per-mile will benefit a person who hardly uses their vehicle, obviously. But for a trucker, and my daughter drives 44-ton trucks, she's 34 years of age, and she works for a nice company which actually looks after her very well. She does about 100,000 miles a year.
Wow.
You just work out what that means in terms of, and bear in mind, a truck does about 5 or 6, 7 or 8 miles to the gallon. It's already working fuel duty. Just leave it alone and let clean fuel technology evolve by itself. You don't need to actually force people into a situation whereby, particularly into a different mode of transport. We're all made to feel guilty because we're driving a diesel or a petrol car. That's part of the policy and part of the globalist approach to what we're doing, particularly people like Bill Gates, is forcing that particular approach on us. Electric vehicles are great, but they should stand on their own merit because, as I think I've said to you before, EVs are only going to be adopted because there's subsidies, much more better tax benefits for actually driving an EV. But if you live in a 12th floor flat, how are you going to charge it with your great big extension lead hanging down your window and all those sort of things? We don't have the national grid. We don't have all those sorts of things. And one of the policies, I'm building with the Advanced UK is that we need to get drill, baby, drill. These are the sorts of things we should do. We're spending loads of money in importing gas and electricity from Norway, and they're getting it from the sea that we could actually do it from. It's called the North Sea. And we need to restore those licenses. We need to actually frack. Yes, fracking's politically...
The F word.
Oh, yes, we mustn't say that. But, it hasn't caused earthquakes in other places. Yes, there's when a truck goes past your window, that's more of on the Richter scale, more of a problem than the fracking and that sort of thing. We are sitting on something like $1.5 trillion of oil and gas. Why are we not doing it? If we had that, we'd have the cheapest energy in the world and we'd have more businesses coming in because we've got cheap energy. We'd have imports so much better. But what we're doing is we're buying stuff from China, from Russia, all those sorts of ways, Norway, and we've got the most expensive electricity and gas bills in the world. And when you see Ed Miliband, who's probably the most dangerous man in the politics, he is, because he does carry a lot of power, saying that we're going to have our bills are going to be £300 cheaper, but they're now £500 more since they come in. And this comes back to my whole point about honesty and dishonesty. They've lied to us to get into policy. And the only reason that Labour got in is because the Tories were so bad. We know that. Now they're even worse, Labour, and that's why Reform are jumping on the bandwagon with that. But unfortunately, my final point about Reform, really, from my point of view, is they're moving further and further to the uni-party position, almost to left of centre at the moment. I knocked on doors in Dover saying, you won't start paying tax until $20,000, you earn £20,000. Because we're currently, you start paying tax at $12,500. What a great incentive for working. Getting off benefits and for youngsters. But no, they've dropped that now. Richard Tice came out only a few months ago or weeks ago saying that policy is now an aspiration, not a policy.
An aspiration.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Yeah. Nothing. Well, it means nothing. It means something that's just going to get put on the back pile and then forgotten about, really.
And yet that's what I was knocking on doors saying we're going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I was actually, peddling a lie. I can understand we have to be realistic about our finances because, is it 1.5 trillion in debt we are, and this magical 22 billion black hole, which is really 50 billion in terms of the annual deficit.
Yeah.
Those sorts of things. And, we've got racial thieves who just can't believe how bad she is at numbers, everything possible. And frankly, all I see is doom and gloom. And more money is being spent on benefits, more money spent on the blob, the civil service, getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. The civil service has grown much faster than in terms of jobs, and there's more in the civil service in central government than there is in the whole of local government now across the country.
Absolutely insane.
So. And FairFuelUK is still going strong, and I value people joining up and signing up for free for FairFuelUK.com.
Amazing. Well, thanks. I mean, people like you just keep me hopeful for politics, honestly. Thank you so much for coming on, Howard.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.